would you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Roll call, please.
Director Eliphas?
Here.
Director Evans will be Director Martin?
Present.
Director Smollett?
Here.
Director Tanner?
Here. Entertain a motion to approve the,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Very good. Do we have any public comment, Diane? Thank you. I did see him on the road today, so he's probably walking here.
He was going to the gun range.
One item. Fiscal year 2018-2019 budget. Take it away.
All right, I'll jump in first. So the purpose of the workshop is to present the board with a high-level overview in preparation for the presentation that the board will see on June 6th. And at that meeting, we'll be asking the board to adopt the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget. So Finance Manager Owens will provide a summary of the process the budget preparation has undergone, but I want to assure the board that it's been pretty extensive. So we started back in December and have worked on it regularly since then. Every staff at all levels of the organization has been working on it. We've had people from the field, all the way through their supervisors, managers, including the general manager. This has been vetted by the finance committee, so it's been looked at pretty extensively. And I think you'll find that we've really controlled the costs that we can control here. There are some things outside of our control, but we've done everything that we can. And I think you'll see a budget that will be forwarded to the board's approval that does several things. One, it's within the revenue estimates that are based on the already approved rates. So nothing in this budget says we need higher rates. The rates that were approved by the board is sufficient. It doesn't draw on reserves. In fact, it'll actually add to the reserves at the end of the year. We'll maintain the high levels of service we have all along. We're not going to be cutting any positions or eliminating any services that we've done. It pays all of our current pension obligations and all of our debt service. And I think it puts us in a position to retain a really high credit rating, and that's really important. And it'll actually be able to accommodate some level of water sales reduction. So if the drought comes back and we have to sell less water than we project, the budget is still robust enough to accommodate those. But most importantly, what we want to do is hear from the board members today. So we'll make the presentation, and we want to hear back from you in terms of any additional information you need or any additional analyses that are required. Because if we don't hear anything today, what you see on June 6th is going to be basically the same thing that you see today. But we think that we'll get some feedback, and we're prepared to incorporate that feedback and make changes in the presentation at the final budget adoption on June 6th. So with that, I'll ask Wes to come up and he can kick off the presentation.
Good afternoon, President Hernandez, members of the board. It's my pleasure to present you with the proposed 2018-2019 budget. If it works. Oh, we've got to turn it on first. Okay, so this is our, for those of you that aren't in the finance committee meetings, this is our budget party page. I didn't want to leave you out. So this should get you in a cheery mood before we bore you with numbers. So we're about to head down the corner of Budget Street and Savings Avenue, and I'll take you on that trip. So the agenda today, there's actually going to be a lot on the agenda, but it will be a team effort. Mike's going to help me out with the presentation today. So first, I will go through the budget process and calendar, talk to you a little about where we've been, what we've done, and where we're going. Then I'll go over the water and sewer operating expenses. Then I'll talk a little bit about salaries and benefits. And then Mike will actually talk to you about the water sales and purchases and the sewer revenue. Next, I'll talk to you about the capital budget. I'll go over the reserve balances, and then we'll go into the next steps. So the budget process and calendar, this is a nifty little timeline. On the left side, it shows our internal process, and the right side shows the meetings and workshops that we've had or are going to have. So as General Manager Prum mentioned, we actually start in December planning, getting ready, and we go through January planning. We send out the calendar and stuff and the material sheets in January, but in February is really where we get into the details. So in February, we update the audited actual numbers for the budget, and we start working on the projections for 2018. And then the individual departments actually submit their budget requests to the supervisors and managers. On February 26th, the Finance Committee met and went over the budget process review and calendar and looked at some of last year's or previous year's actuals. And in March, we compiled the operating budget. We completed the fiscal year 2018 projections, and we prepared the payroll estimates. The committee met on March 22nd to go over the operating budget requests and to review the preliminary salaries and benefits. Then in April, we incorporated the operating budget, we prepared the draft capital budget, and we actually reviewed the capital and operating budget draft in total. The committee met on April 2nd to go over the operating budget and the preliminary capital numbers. They met again on April 25th to go over the draft operating and capital budget and discuss any recommended items the committee had, any changes they had, or suggestions they had. Now in May, we've reviewed the draft budget, revised and refined. It's been reviewed and revised and refined by management and staff. And we are presenting the proposed budget to you today. You can't really see the slides very well, but the green check marks, that's stuff we've done, and I've got red arrows for stuff that we're going to do in the future. It's kind of, I was impressed with myself on that, sorry. I had to So now in June, we'll be incorporating any changes you have today, revising and refining the budget, and then June 6th, we'll bring it to the board for approval. And that'll be the finish line.
Amen.
So this is page 2 of your budget. This is the total operating budget. I'm going to use this as sort of my home page. I'll try to hit on each section of it in the presentation. So I'm going to start with the water operations. Now the water operating budget on page, well, I'll show you the page later, but the water operating budget is made up of the operating expenses and water purchases, which is the 32.2. Michael, I should talk about that later, so I'm going to focus on the $11.7 million. So here's the water operating expense budget. And you can see 73% is actually water purchases. The other 11 million makes up like 27%. So this is page 11 of your budget, and this is a summary. All the information and the details for this are on pages 12 through 15, I believe, in your budget package. And if you need further detail, I sent you the water materials and services packet that has all the detail for all those line items. The major changes here, besides water purchases, our operations actually increased by $200,000. That's a result of pumping charges increasing by $161,000, which is electrical costs. G&A increased by $200,000. That's just a result of less labor being charged to projects, so less overhead. So back to the home page. Now I'll talk a little bit about the wastewater operations of $13.1 million, which is 16% of the budget. Here's the breakout of that, and you can see that the majority of the wastewater operating budget is treatment at 47%. This is page 21 of your budget. It's a summary of the wastewater operations, and the details for this can be found on pages 22 through 24. The further detail is actually available in your materials and supplies for sewer that was provided in your packet as well. The major changes here are treatment actually decreased by $200,000, and that was a result of a reduction in Encina's budget of $107,000, and a reduction in outside services to the plant and the lift station of around $100,000. So next I'll talk a little about the salaries and benefits. So during 2017-2018, we had 4 retirements, we had 4 vacant positions, we had 2 people go on leave without pay, and 2 people on reduced schedules. So even in filling those vacant positions and budgeting for future steps and a COLA of 3.5% in this fiscal year in 2019, we still only saw a modest increase of $40,000 in budgeted salaries in total. And total salaries and benefits actually budgeted to be reduced by $20,000. So this next slide, it's a little busy, it's very colorful, but I wanted to show you, this is budget to actual salaries and benefits over the last 5 years. The bottom portion of the chart actually shows the salaries, and the top part shows the benefits. And what it's intended to show is that through efficient operations and effective management and scrutinizing every position as they become available, the district has been able to maintain salaries and benefits at a steady level. Salaries have been maintained at $9.7 million budgeted for the last 3 years, and benefits have been around $5.8 million. And we've actually achieved a savings of actual to budget over the last 4 years. So back to the home page. Next, Mike is going to talk to you about water purchases.
Thank you, Wes. President Hernandez, members of the board, thank you. So now we'll get into the fun and exciting part, the part that I like, my 250,000 lines of data. So what I'm going to do is exit out of this for a moment. Oops. Let me get into the Excel. So what we have, as Wes mentioned, we have about $32,250,000 in purchases coming up through our budget, and $26,500,000 of that is in commodity, the variable costs, and about $5.7 million of that is fixed cost passed through from the Water Authority.
I'm sorry, Mike, what page is this?
I don't think it's in the handout. It's probably page 13 or 14. Oh, in the budget? Yeah.
I think it's on page 11 right now. Yeah, it's on page 11. So you're looking at the budget 1819 column.
So in the budget for fiscal year 18-19, as Wes mentioned, is the water purchases are about $32,250,000. And what that's derived of, we're expecting purchases of about 16,700 acre feet, which is about close to 3.5% above what we're projecting for this current fiscal year. So with that, as General Manager Pearl mentioned, we do a sensitivity analysis to make sure that if we go through some cutbacks, if we're not selling as much water, do we still have enough leeway in the budget to cover that? 2015, I think it was when we had the 20% budget cutbacks, or water cutbacks, that kind of hurt us a little bit in sales, and I'll show you why in a minute. Through the spreadsheet, I just wanted to kind of go over a couple of things. The left side here is how much water we're projected to sell. We're projected to sell about 15,500, 15,400 acre feet of water. And through the spreadsheet, we can tell how much is going to be approximately how much we're going to sell at Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And then add those together, and that comes to roughly 15,350 acre feet of sales. And then with that, with the already approved rate increases from last year, we're like General Manager Perone mentioned, there are no additional rate increases through what's already been pre-approved. We can then estimate what the revenues would be in a Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So the total revenue is about $31,800,000 in commodity revenue. And then we have our fixed charges, our readiness to serve, which is about $13.3 million. Our water purchases, which I just mentioned, are right over in here at $32,250,000. So what I did is we wanted to run a little sensitivity analysis. What if water sales were cut back 5%, 10%? What if they were 5% more? What would happen? What would that mean to our reserves? So I'll do one iteration because it takes about 2 minutes to go through, but then I've got some other ones over here. So if you look real quick, we have the revenue by tiers, as I mentioned, and the total revenue over here. And what I wanted to kind of point out is when the sales cut back 10%, doesn't mean our revenue cuts back 10%. Most of our cutbacks are going to be in the Tier 3, which is our highest rate. So a 10% cutback in sales is probably going to be about a 15% cutback in revenue. So I wanted to kind of just emphasize that point. And what I'll do is this sensitivity analysis that I did. So if we say that there's going to be a 5% cutback in sales, and it's going to go through its iteration, so it's going to take about 20 to 30 seconds for it to go through. So originally, as I mentioned, we had 31,884,000. So here's the numbers now. What it'll do, and if you look up in this, if you're looking at your screen, if you kind of look where my cursor is, the sales would be a decrease of about 2 million, and our purchases would only be cut back about 1 million. So it's not a one-for-one relationship, and I just kind of wanted to emphasize that point. So the 5%, in this case, the 5% cutback in sales would, again, be about $2 million in revenue cutback and about $1 million that we're going to be paying to the water, on our monthly bills. So a net change to reserves balance would be about $1,960,000. Right now, I believe in the fiscal year 2018-19, we have about 2.2 million projected, right? Oh, I'm sorry, 2.2 million projected to go into reserves. So even a 5% cutback would only take about 1 million of that, so we'd still be okay. Without having to run iterations again, I put down on here on the right, so if you can kind of see where my cursor is. A 10% cutback, for example, would be about a $1.8 million hit to reserves. So we would still be throwing a little bit of money into reserves, not quite as much as that, we have projected, but we'd still be comfortable with that. If it's anything over than that, then obviously we'd have to make adjustments. And so what I try to look for is a confidence interval. For most statistics, you want to be like in a 95% confident that you're confident with these numbers. And for the most part, within the 10%, minus 10% to about a plus 5% is pretty highly confident of 95%. So that's what I kind of wanted to show you there. I think that's all I had on the water purchases. For sewer, we didn't change any of the rates for sewer. So the sewer revenue is projected to be pretty much the same as it was last year, and I think the sewer is on page, budget, 21? Okay, it's on page 21. So I believe there's about a 1% increase in sewer revenue, and that's mainly due to growth. So the overall sewer revenue is going to go from, you look at projected from 17-18, it's at 19.8 million to almost 20 million even. So virtually flat. Question?
Mike, can you really quickly address one thing? So you mentioned 16,700 acre feet that we're purchasing and about 15,500 that we're selling.
Yes.
So why don't you talk about that?
So there's about at 8%, 7 to 8% we're estimating in non-revenue water. So that could be anything from feeding water to this building to all of our own internal buildings. We have water loss, meaning hit fire hydrant, water main break, any other things like that. We would also have evaporation in our system. There's another one I wanted to mention. Yeah, some of the meters, they're probably 98% accurate. So there's some in the meter inaccuracies as well.
Thank you.
And we've mentioned before that we went through a water audit, and our water loss percentage is well below, it's actually below industry standards.
Director Martin, you had a question?
Yeah, Mike, you've safeguarded us in case of less water being sold. But I'm thinking the trending right now is people out of the drought, it's actually going up. So can we assume that if it goes up, it's not 1-for-1?
Yes.
The water hogs are gonna be using more water, is that the?
Yeah, and I should have mentioned, I'm sorry, that we're already projecting about a 3.4 to about 3.5% increase over our current fiscal year. The current fiscal year, we're probably in double digits from the previous fiscal year. However, you can't expect that trend line to keep going
Right.
double digits. So we did cut it back to about 3.5% for this year. And I did mention the cutbacks of 5% and 10%. Right here, we have a increase. If water sales are 5% more than what I'm projecting right now, we'd see about another 860,000 going into reserves. I doubt it would get as high as, like I said, the double digit. That's not sustainable, but I put it in here anyway, just so you can see the magnitude of that.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Very good. Yes, continue.
I just have
Oh, sorry.
Just remind me again, what was the percentage we have set aside for non-revenue money, non-revenue?
It's about anywhere, it trends from about 7 to 8%.
7 to 8%. Okay, thanks.
And if there's no other questions.
Yes.
I don't know if there's a way you can be too scientific about this, but do you also take into account, every year the population doesn't go down, it goes up, and there's more homes that are built and not homes that go away. So how do you guys capture that?
Yeah, we have a couple of ways we do that. We get from the city of San Marcos, we get a building, I don't know what the report's called, but it kind of like a building permit issued, so we know approximately how many are coming in that year. And we also have an internal process. I look at historically how many meters have been added every month, and it's probably about a 1% growth that we're assuming for this coming fiscal year, and that's part of that 3.4% that we've already included in the growth.
So you guys plan for it?
Yes.
Director?
Yeah, the water loss audit that was
conducted, what did they indicate were industry standard?
Offhand, I don't remember. I know that we were about 2% lower.
Oh, really? 8% seems a little high to me these days, but.
Yeah, it was, and I was kind of surprised at that too. As a matter of fact, they have a class that I would love to have gone to today and tomorrow, but
Yeah.
to get certified for that, but I'll do that next year.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and return back to the
Mhm.
operating budget. Thank you.
That's okay.
You have a name for your jug?
No, you want to name it for me?
No, don't go there, don't go there.
Okay, so in just a minute, after it goes through all the VGA stuff here, searches all the ports. Is theirs on? This one's not. I'll just wait for this patiently. Once it gets to the VGA one, it'll
We
start.
have it up here.
Yeah, it's over there too. So I was gonna bring this up, the budget party page again, just to get us back in a cheery mood. There it goes. Because I figured Mike would bring up a lot of numbers, but he was really exciting, so we really don't need that. I just like to see it. So let's go back to, I won't get out of it because then I'm gonna, should have done that now, so I did.
You're going a little bit too fast for me.
Yeah, this is the other stuff.
I can read every word.
Okay, there we go. Okay, back to the home page. I would have gotten out of it, but if I did, I would have lost that screen, so I just went through all that stuff in there. So back to the home page, I'm gonna talk about the capital budget. The $17.1 million shown on this page is actually the amount projected to be expended in 2019 of the total capital budget. The total 5-year capital budget is actually $144 million. So we'll take a look at that budget there, and then I'll break it out by year going forward. So here's a summary of this year's 5-year capital budget to last year's 5-year capital budget. And you can see this year is made up of $77 million of carryover projects. Those are projects that were budgeted last year and haven't been completed. The new CIP budget, new CIP requests, and future CIP requests. And future CIP requests haven't changed from last year. It's the same thing. They're not going to be worked on this year. They'll be worked on in the future. And that's $144 million in total. The capital budget also includes easement, vehicles, and equipment, and the total for that this year is $800,000 and $770,000, something like that. And that is actually, forgot to mention, the total CIP budget is on page 34 of your budget package if you're looking at it. And the vehicles and equipment are actually on page 96. So the change from last year to this year is $22.3 million. And the majority of that's made up of an increase in the carryover projects of $13 million and new CIP requests of 9.4. That's a change, not the total new CIP request. This chart shows the breakout of the projects by water and sewer over the next 5 years. Water for 18-19 is $3.6 million, and the sewer projects will be $13.5 million. The total water projects over the next 5 years are $45.1. Total sewer is $98.9 for the total of $144 million. And of the $98.9 million in the sewer, this chart actually shows the portion that belongs to Encina. So Encina projects account for $23.7 million of the $98.9 sewer capital projects in the next 5 years. This, I know there's a lot of detail here, but it's actually a summary of page 34 of your budget. This just shows the total, sort of detail, the major projects for the carry forward and new projects. The carry forward is the 77.2, and the new is actually 66.8 if you include the future projects of 22.9. And the largest new capital requests are the Encino parallel land outfall and the Encino wastewater authority 5-year capital plan of $23.6 million. Again, this is very detailed, but is a summary of page 35. This shows the major projects over the next 5 years that will be worked on. And I think notable is the land outfall is scheduled to be started, so to speak, in 2020-21. At that point, we may have to look at issuing debt, but that'll be something we'll consider when we get to it. It's not for another couple of years. It's nothing we'll be approving in this budget. It's actually for a future budget. We're just doing 1-year budget this year. So finally, we'll take a look at the reserve balances. So I've got the actual reserve balances for the last 5 years and the projected balances for 17-18 and 18-19. And you can see With the 18-19 budget, water actually goes up by $0.9 million. Sewer decreases by $4.8 million or 4.5. 4.5 mainly as a result of the Encina projects and the Rock Springs project. That being said, though, staff believes with current revenues and rates, we can maintain sufficient reserves to keep our debt service coverage, our cash, our days in cash, to maintain our credit rating of AA+. And while that sounds like a good finishing line, I still have to talk about the next steps. So the next steps, the purpose of this meeting, as General Manager Prumo mentioned, is for you to give us any questions or feedback or changes you'd like to see in the budget. We will incorporate those and put them into a recommended budget, which we will present to you, distribute to you by May 30th, and present to you on June 6th for adoption. Now that is my finishing line. So see you June 6th.
Move to adjourn? No. Questions?
No, I can tell you the amount of budget meetings we've had and the answers that they have certainly asked, we have certainly asked. Director Snow and myself have been quite a few, and you've answered them all great. I think you've done all could be expected of a budget. You did a really good job. So with that, I recommend that we do whatever we have to do. That's a workshop, so.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Director
To
Snell?
echo Director Martin, first off, thank you for working with the Finance Committee and going through this process. And I know that we've made some changes along the way, but they're really kind of the more high-level things that I was looking for, if you remember from the Finance meeting, was to work within the parameters of the revenue that we have. That, you know, we weren't going to go ask for more money, which you guys have done, so thank you. That was probably the biggest piece of this that for me. And then the second is I really do like the fact that we're going to be increasing our contributions to the reserves. I think we learned just last night with things happen, you know, pipes break and infrastructure needs to be replaced and such. So having strong reserves is also important. And then the other piece of it too, which I don't think we can discount, is is keeping our credit rating up and being able to accomplish both staying within our revenue without having to ask for more, increasing our reserves while also being in sound opinion for the agencies. It's a win-win-win, so thank you. So I don't have any other changes or comments.
Thank you.
Director Ellsworth?
Yeah, do you have any trend charts on the reserve levels? That's kind of helpful to see. I know we had, I think last year we had.
Yeah, I think you had.
For reserve levels or like
Yeah.
days in cash? If you.
Well, yeah, I think you were showing both in the past.
So, I mean, this shows the reserve levels from 2012, 13, fiscal year 13, all the way through 19. So if you combine the two, it's the water and sewer, but you can see the reserve levels are actually increasing. That's combined. We do have days in cash. I do have a slide here, actually.
We used to have one that was kind of combined that showed everything on one. It showed the minimum required.
Oh, okay, with the
yeah.
minimum and max, yeah.
That's kind of helpful
Do
to see.
you have that one as,
I have it. I don't have it here.
That's okay. Maybe include it in
Okay.
the June 6th meeting.
Yeah, no problem.
That'd be helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, that just shows the floor and the ceiling based on the reserve policy.
Yeah.
And where we're at.
Right, and it kind of shows a trend going forward.
Just to follow up real quick on the reserves, because they are so important. I noticed as we were going through this process that last year we had budgeted for roughly a negative 300,000, actually borrowing from reserves, if you will. But after we went through the course of the year, it came out to a positive like 1.9 million. I don't have it right in front of me open, so the numbers are give or take. How did we do that? And it's a good thing, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good swing, right?
Yeah, that was a result of the increase in demand, water purchases.
Okay.
Mainly that, I believe, and a decrease in.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, we probably projected last year about 5 to 6% increase in water sales.
And
It went to 10, 11, 12%. And also, as I mentioned, a 5% increase in sales is
Yeah.
probably 7 to 8% increase in revenue. That's the main reason.
Yeah, it was all water sales and purchases driven.
Just like a private company, if you sell more of your product.
Yeah.
Question?
Mostly just a comment, but one is a question, and that is when we get the final presentation, you will include the days of operations and all that. Normally, don't we do that? I know we do it monthly on our little thing, but,
If you'd like to see them, I actually have it right here.
okay, that, if there's a little quick sheet, I always feel comfortable knowing that. And then I wanted to.
Are you talking about the days in cash? Is that?
Pardon, I want to know how many days in cash,
Okay.
so I know when I need to leave town.
Yeah, here it is.
I-
See if I can get this up on the screen for you. So, this one will come up quicker, it'll hopefully come up on your
Oh,
screen.
there
Yep, here
it
it
is.
is.
Got
Nope,
it.
now
It's
it's
all
on.
right.
Yeah, that one's gonna take a little while.
Yeah, this is part of it.
So you can see, in going through this, looking at our reserves, this is a criteria that the rating agencies use in maintaining our credit as far as, you look at aging infrastructure, days in cash, debt service coverage, reserve levels, a lot of different factors are considered for this. So while this shows that the Fitch rating, I actually had a conversation with Fitch. There it goes. I talked with Fitch, and the median rating for a AA, or median days in cash for a AA rating is 547 days, which seems outrageous, but that's what it is. So in talking to him, I'm like, are we in danger or risk of, our rating being decreased? And because it's a combination, as long as we don't have an aging infrastructure and the other ratios are satisfied, they will make some sort of exceptions, and it's a combined factor in looking at the rating. And so pretty much what I was told, as long as we're around about a year of days in cash, we should be okay. So we're keeping it around 320 days for the next 4 years, and that's an outlook as well. It's not necessarily in stone. We do have 410 days budgeted for 18-19, which is, in my opinion, in good shape. So that's what we looked at in considering that.
Well, I appreciate that, because I do remember last time, when the presentation was done, Tom mentioning wanting to keep those days out. So I see we're going down, but that doesn't, we don't know where water's going either, do we? And then I just wanted to compliment finance and the committee and everyone who's been involved in this, and such a thorough inspection and analysis, and the details that are in here on all the projects and what they're purchasing and why. And it's important that I think we're cautious in guessing where the water will go, simply because the weather is very strange. And I had just read a little thing this morning that they think this La Nina is going to be followed by a huge El Nino coming towards the end of next year. And I thought, oh my gosh, not another. So we're in a real bulge, and I appreciate the cautiousness, and yet I'm willing to be optimistic in what we can do. I appreciate that. It's a really good report. Thank you,
We have
Finance
a
Committee.
great team working on the budget, and I'm happy to be working with all of them.
Director Martin?
I have a question that was brought up by the director. One of the many, I'm sure, bullet points that Fitch uses is days in cash.
Yes.
Is there a sheet that tells us all the bullet points of what they're looking at and how they're weighted? Because I think in the past, it's been used and abused. And I'd like to know their ratings, exactly what that comes out to, because a year's worth of days in cash, wow, that seems like an awful lot. But I can see where it could be used by somebody. I'd just like to find out, what the other criteria are, so we know where we place the importance.
So what I could do is, if you'd like, we could actually provide you with our last rating report, and that would give you an idea of what they looked at and what they went through as far as that, and giving us the AA+. They don't unfortunately give us their secret formula to giving the rating. They just tell us it's a combination of factors, and they give us an idea that if we're around a year, we'll be okay. And as long as we have, our infrastructure is not aging, if we keep our debt service, we have to keep our debt service because we have covenants to cover that anyway. But those factors have to be considered. So they look at all of it, and they don't really tell you this much percentage here and this much percentage there, but they just tell you they look at it all.
And I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm gonna be keeping some of this paperwork with me for tomorrow's meeting,
Okay?
because I think that there's gonna be a correlation here that we're gonna need to look at.
Absolutely.
Director Snell?
Yeah, do you either know off the top of your head, or can you provide us what our Fitch rating was in 9, 10, 10, 11, and 11, 12? Because back then we were really, as far as,
We were
days in
blackballed.
cash.
Yeah. I could probably find it. I'll have to look
I mean,
back.
but do you recall there, this was I don't know, you know, it's 6 to 8 years ago. I mean, do you recall, were we still, have we always been double A rating?
Oh,
or-
no.
So I think we were
I don't
double A
think so.
minus. I think in 2012 when I started, I think we were double A minus, but I'd have to
Oh.
verify that.
Wow.
But I don't think, have we been below, you might know.
I thought we were below double A when I first got on, but I can't recall that either. Yes.
Yes, so the Fitch numbers on their line, is that their average of all their,
That's their median for the double A rating.
Oh.
So there's a.
oh, I see, okay.
And they did send me a report of the median ratings for certain industries, and it's,
And they've raised their standards, it looks like.
they have, it was 395, I believe, last year, so now it's up to 547.
That's quite a change.
Yeah, it's,
The question, just to be absolutely confident of what I think I know, if we have 410 days that people don't pay their bill, we can operate. Is that what I'm seeing here?
we have it liquid, yes.
Very good. And then the other question I have is, we have got these two studies that one's potential and the other one's actually going on, the solar and potential the groundwater. If those come up, are those in the capital budget presently?
Yes.
Okay,
They're
very
included.
good. So we don't have to worry about that. Further questions? This was excellent. This was an excellent job, well presented. Actually, I anticipated we were gonna be here for 2 hours, but I appreciate the finance company,
Yeah.
finance committee doing its front-end work so that we weren't here for 2 hours.
We usually are, maybe
I
three,
know.
maybe 3.
I would have to say, to be honest, a night and day process
Yes,
this year, and couldn't be happier.
absolutely.
With
Thank
everything
the
that
staff
we
and
had.
thank everybody for
Staff
doing
was
their
awesome.
job down the line.
Everybody was awesome.
Very, very nice. Thank you very much.
Everybody has done a great job.
Further questions? I don't. There is no recommendation, so we're just gonna take this and move.
Exactly. We'll use the feedback we got here and anything that we think of between now and when the agenda has to be posted for the
Mhm.
June 6th meeting, and we'll make a presentation on June 6th, and the recommendation at that time will be to adopt the operating and capital budget for 2018, 2019.
Right, and although I won't be here, what I've seen tonight, unless there's a hole with somewhere that somebody finds, looks excellent.
Yeah.
And so that ends the discussion, that ends the business. Anything else before we go? Let's go home.
All right. Thank you.
Excellent.